a woman, a hammer, and a tent peg. What in the world am I going to be talking about today? Let's find out. Everybody, welcome to Behold and Sing. I'm very excited to be with you on this second day of 2024. This time, oh my goodness, it just flies by the older I get. And I'm not even going to talk about my age and what's happening this year. But I'm excited to be here, and I hope that you are ready to hear something special from the Word of God. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite women in the Bible. And when you first hear the story, you may be scratching your head saying, why is she your favorite? Hopefully by the end you'll understand why. I'm talking about a woman named Jael, whose story is in Judges chapters 4 and 5. She was part of an amazing time in Israel. I'll give you the backstory and then we'll read. It's the time of Deborah. And you would think that perhaps Deborah would be my favorite woman in the Bible, but she's up there, not quite number one. Deborah was judging in Israel at the time. Israel had sinned again, and they had been under the hand of evil King Jabin of Canaan and his army captain, Sisera, for 20 years. They were done. They began crying out to the Lord in repentance, asking for help. And through Deborah, through Barak, God sent them help. And he sent Barak with the army to a place called Kadesh. And this woman named Jael just happened to live in a tent near Kadesh. It was also near a river, Kishon, which was very pivotal in this story. We're gonna circle back around to Deborah probably in a later podcast, so I won't go into all of the details, but just know that God has drawn the enemy, Sisera, and his army to the river where Barak and his army are, and God intends for Sisera and the army, all of the enemy, to be completely wiped out. So on the day of battle, God had sent rain, and Sisera, being a proud man, had sent all of his 900 iron chariots too close to the river, and they all got bogged down. And Barak and his men had wiped every single man out, except for one, Sisera. Big baby that he was, lit down off of his chariot and took off running. And that's where we're going to pick up here. Oh, excuse me. In Judges chapter 4. And let's see. How about if we start in verse 15. And the Lord discomfited Sisera. In other words, he beat him and all his chariots and all his hosts with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera lighted down off his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the host unto Harosheth of the Gentiles, and all the hosts of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword, and there was not a man left. Howbeit Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite. Now, Jael and her husband, Heber, had moved away from their family, and they had put up this tent, which was their home, in this place that just happened to be just down the way from this battle that was going on that day. And Heber somehow had made a deal with King Jabin so that he had peace with him. The Bible doesn't say what he did. Was it a business deal? Did he supply him sheep? I don't know. But somehow he had made peace so that he and his wife could live in that tent in peace. However, they were still part of what was going on around them. They were fully aware of the things that Jabin and Sisera had done to the people of Israel for 20 years. And on this day, Jael was fully aware of the battle that was going on. She was very watchful. And you'll see in a minute why she was watchful. And we'll see how important that was. All right, so continuing. It says, Jael went out of her tent to meet Sisera. She was watching very closely. And said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned in unto her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. So here she is. Oh, come here, I'll save you. Come on in. And she covered him up, hid him under a blanket. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray thee, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. She opened a bottle of milk and gave him drink and covered him. Again he said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be when any man doth come and inquire of thee, and say, Is there any man here? Thou shalt say, No. So he gave her instruction. Okay, I'm hiding here, but I don't trust you. So if someone comes to the door, here's what you've got to say. There's nobody here but me, okay? Then Jael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent, in other words, a great big old tent peg, and took a hammer in her hand, the mallet, the at least 5 pound, if not more, mallet that it would take to drive the tent stake into the ground. And she went softly unto him, and smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary, so he died. What in the world? This brave woman, obviously, this was not an accident. She went out looking for him. She had watched the battle. She knew. She saw him get down off the chariot and run like a girl, and she invited him in because she had a plan. And she carried out the plan. She's amazing. Behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him and said unto him, Come, I will show you the man whom you seek. And when he had come into her tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So God subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Israel, and the hand of the children of Israel prospered, and prevailed against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, king of Canaan. Now, I want to read a little bit more in chapter 5, because this is the song of Deborah and Barak that they sang as a victory, a worshipful victory song to the Lord on the day of this battle. That's what it says in verse 5. Then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, saying. So they sang this song, and part of that song, we're going to slip down to verse 24. Here is what Deborah and Barak thought about Jael. Blessed above women shall Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, be. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought forth butter in a lordly dish. She put her hand to the nail and her right hand to the workman's hammer, and with the hammer she smote Sisera. She smote off his head when she had pierced and stricken through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay down. At her feet he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. See, it's very significant and important that Sisera was taken out, not just the men, because in these times, a commander could return to his king, he could recruit more men and reconstitute his army, and he could return to cause more trouble. Sisera had to be taken out. And the Lord used a simple woman living in a tent named Jael to do it. The reason was, verse 31, it says, and the land had rest 40 years. God was giving back to Israel double of what they lost to King Jabin and to Sisera. But he had to do it through Deborah, yes, through Barak, yes, but also through a simple woman named Jael. And what I want to bring out about Jael, what is so significant to me and why I enjoy the story so much, is that she was just a normal woman. There was nothing special about her. She was living in a tent. We all understand the challenges that would provide. I could not imagine how much dust and dirt would just be blowing into that thing and tracked into that thing constantly. How hard she had to work to keep her home clean. She had to walk to the river that this battle was taking place at to bring water for her family. I'm sure she had to help her husband take care of animals because she brought forth milk. It tells me they had goats. And so she's out milking the goats in the morning. She's probably planting a vegetable garden. She's probably helping him harvest crops. She's cooking, she's cleaning, she's doing laundry at the river. She's got a very difficult life, but she's a very normal woman of that day. There's nothing great or astounding about her. She's not a princess. She's not a queen. She's not noble in any way, shape, or form. But that did not keep God from using her, because he used one of the very things that was normal to her life. It was not the first time she ever picked up a tent peg. It was not the first time that she picked up that 5-pound mallet. That when the wind's blowing and her husband's gone, which on this particular day he was, who had to put the tent peg back in the ground? She did. Okay, she had built up muscles in her everyday life that God used for his glory. Think about that. She's just living life. She's not doing anything beyond what is normal to her. And yet she was being prepared for this very day. So that in that moment, when she was inspired to go out and invite Sisera into her tent with the purpose of taking him out in her mind. That's why she covered him up. She made him warm. That's why she gave him milk instead of water. And not just any milk. In verse 25, it says she brought forth butter in a lordly dish. That means she took her most beautiful bowl and she dipped into her milk jug and she took the cream off the top. That which is made into butter. She took that cream, that thick, sweet, amazing cream, and she poured it in a dish. She gave him that to drink instead of water. Why? She wanted him to fall asleep. The indication in verse 26 is that before she drove the tent peg into his temple, and I know I'm being graphic here, but she was wise enough, she hit him on the head with the hammer first to knock him out and make sure that he wouldn't wake up. And then to make sure the job was done, because she is a woman alone, she doesn't want the guy to come back. How many of you have watched the silly horror movies I used to when I was a teenager? Thank goodness I haven't seen one in a million years. But the villain always woke back up. Well, JL was smart enough to know. Get him weary, sleepy, let him fall asleep, whack him on the head with the hammer, and then put the tent stake through his temple so there's no way he can get back up. He's done for. Then she watches out the tent door until she sees Barak. She invites him in to see, here's what I did. I helped you. But what I want to pinpoint on is her normalcy was what God used. So what in your normal life could God use in an amazing way? Maybe you love to bake. You bake cookies, you bake pies, you bake bread. Maybe you find out that your neighbor just lost her husband. Maybe you can take a tray of cookies over and comfort her and console her. Simple to you, normal to you, but so amazingly needed and necessary and important in the life of your neighbor. Maybe you love to read. Maybe you have stacks of books all over your house that no one understands but you, because you just love to read. And maybe you'll find out one day that there's a young family down the street whose third grade son is struggling in reading. Maybe you'll offer to sit with him a couple days a week and help him read. You're normal. could use it for a great purpose in the life of that young boy. Don't discount yourself. Don't think that you're just so normal, you're so unimportant that God can't use you. See, there's a word in the New Testament. It's ministry. It's a very amazing word. I love to do word studies. I dig into the original languages. I'm not an expert, but I'll dig because I want to know. I want to know what the words mean. There's a word ministry, and one day I stumbled across a couple of paragraphs that just turned a light bulb on for me, and I'll never turn it off. Because they said that word, that there were two camps when it came to talking about the origin of that word. One camp said, well, it comes from this word, which means to labor in the dust. But the other camp said it comes from this word, which means to set in order. And it was like this explosive moment, this aha moment, because I realized they were both right. Ministry is laboring in the dust to set in order. Now, we can't set someone's life in order, but we can lead them to Jesus who can. But sometimes it first requires that laboring in the dust. Taking someone to a doctor's appointment can be ministry, because you're opening the door through friendship and kindness to be able to minister to a person who may not know Jesus. And you can direct that person to him. He then can set their life in order. The most important order, eternal order. You can do the work of the ministry in a very normal, everyday way. You don't have to have a church. You don't have to have a platform. You don't have to have a TV studio. You don't have to have a business card or a website. You don't have to have a title or a degree. You simply have to be someone who's willing to take what is normal to you and let God use it in a very supernatural way to touch and bless and help someone else. That's why I love JL so much, because she just used what was normal to her. But because she did, the land had rest 40 years. I hope this has been a help to you. A little bit later in the week, I'm going to share a video that my daughter and her mother-in-law and I did in our home church a couple weeks ago. I think it'll be a blessing to you. But as you consider what we've said today, don't ever give up on the work of the ministry. Don't think you're too old. Don't think that you're not skilled enough. Use what you have, my friend. Use what you have and let God bless it. We'll see you soon.